one of the many problems facing rescuers. The missing sub is one of the only vessels in the world that can reach the Titanic. The wreckage of the Titanic lies on the ocean floor 12,500 feet deep. The missing sub is specially designed to sustain the crushing pressure of the ocean at that level. On board, the sub and its crew manage oxygen levels, monitor the health of the 5 passengers, and navigate the dark depths of the sea. Our next guest knows those waters well. David Guggenheim is the president and founder of Ocean Doctor and is a submarine pilot with experience in submersibles similar to the one that is missing. I spoke to him just a few minutes ago. David, even the best divers can only go down a few hundred feet. The U.S. Navy does have remote-operated vehicles, or ROVs, that can go that deep, but they can't lift the sub or rescue it.
You're right. The role of most ROVs is visual. So the ROV could do a good job of assessing the situation, but wouldn't have the lifting power. You would really need heavy cranes on a ship above to do that kind of lifting.
The sub lost communication about an hour and a half into its descent. You think there are 3 possible things that may have happened. The first, you say, is that it could have gotten tangled up in some sort of debris or fishing nets?
Well, in my training and my experience, we've been told many times that entanglement is the biggest risk to a sub. It is possible that the sub made it to the bottom and somehow got entangled and perhaps moved sideways or in a way that its transducer, which sends sound waves to the surface, was damaged or perhaps at the wrong angle that disrupted communications.
You say the second possibility, though, is that it might have been an electrical short or a fire of some kind, and that would be catastrophic.
And that's the other serious danger that we are trained to deal with, is an electrical fire or a short that completely shorts out the sub. That would leave them powerless. It would also affect the life support system, which depends on fans to blow the air and scrub the carbon dioxide out of the air. That could really leave them, obviously, without communications, without anything with electrical power, and really leave them helpless on the bottom unless they could float themselves up to the surface without their thrusters.
Yeah, you've spent a lot of time in submarines. Talk about the communications aspect here. Several people who've been on this sub by Ocean Gate several times before have said that they have momentarily or even for an hour or two lost communication. They would communicate with the mothership through brief text messages. There's also a pinger on board to help locate the sub?
I don't know if this particular sub has a pinger. Hopefully it does. But it's very common. I only dive to 2,000 feet, which is a fraction of where they are, but it's very common for ocean conditions to interfere with communications. And I, too, have been without communications for up to an hour or so. It's just like when you dive into a swimming pool and it's warm on top and you suddenly feel that cold water. That stratification, as it's called, can just do havoc with the sound waves, because you can't use regular radio waves underwater. They just don't work.
If anybody was alive in the submarine and was able to knock or something, would people be able to hear that with sonar?
Absolutely. With listening devices, they'd be able to hear That's a common piece of equipment for military submarines, obviously. They're doing surveillance. So that would be a possibility of people being able to rescue them, to locate them.
Right. A journalist who'd been on this sub said that there were 7 different ways the sub could ascend. If they did manage to ascend, they would then be bobbing on the surface of the ocean and actually still very difficult to find.
Yes, I mean, there are different ways a sub can do a self-rescue. One is dropping weights. The other, in my case, was an actual separation of the sub. That isn't the case, doesn't appear to be the case here. So if you're entangled, you could actually cut off the bottom part of the sub and float to the surface. But I've also been in situations bobbing around on the surface where I could barely see the ship and they could barely see me, and it took about an hour for recovery until they could actually, even find me to do the recovery.
Oh, David Guggenheim, thank you for lending us your expertise. You spent a lot of time in the deep, not as deep as this, however, and this is a Herculean effort to find these folks. Do you think they're going to find them? Is there any chance they're still alive?
I think they do have a chance of being alive if they somehow can improvise on life support and they're on the bottom or on the surface. I think there's a good chance they could still be alive, but of course, time is very, very short, and the first thing is they've got to find them.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider, and don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.